I found her outside my building again last night. Same gray SUV. Engine running. Headlights off. Just sitting there. No movement, no calls, no messages. I didn't walk up to the car. I just stood behind the curtain in my apartment, peeking through a slit in the fabric like some ghost of a man who used to have a wife. She thinks I don't notice. But I do. I see the outline of her shoulders in the driver's seat. I see the flicker of her phone screen lighting up her face. And I swear, sometimes she just stares straight at my window like she's waiting for me to open it and ask her why she's here again. But I won't. Not this time. She told me to go find someone else. Her exact words, spat out like venom across our kitchen counter 3 months ago. Curtis, I can't keep doing this. You need someone else. Someone less you. She didn't cry. She didn't pause. She didn't even flinch. She said it like she was doing me a favor. I wish I could say I stood up, grabbed my dignity, and left like a man with a spine. But I didn't. I just stood there blinking at the grocery bag in my hand, the eggs sweating through the plastic, wondering if she meant it or if this was another one of her emotional thunderstorms that passed by morning. But she meant it. She even helped pack my things. What she didn't expect, what no one expected, is that I'd actually leave, and that I'd find someone who didn't treat me like I was furniture in my own home. But now she can't seem to stay away. She's everywhere. I catch her username viewing my stories. I've gotten blank texts from no number IDs. My mail's been opened. A package meant for me was sliced down the side and taped back up. Dana, the woman I'm seeing now, found a voice memo on her car Bluetooth labeled, "Who is she?" and nearly broke down crying because she thought I was hiding something. I wasn't, but I know who put it there. Tessa. That's the thing. When Tessa says she's done, what she really means is, she wants to be the one to do the walking. And now that I'm gone, really gone, she's unraveling in secret, hiding behind walls and headlights in silence. I can't explain it fully. Not yet. There's so much more to this mess. But I know what I saw last night. Her car, across the street. And when I opened my front door just to let some air in, the engine turned on. She didn't drive away immediately. She waited, like she wanted me to know. And I do. I know she's watching. It wasn't until the second time she followed me that I started to feel afraid. Not confused. Not sad. Not angry. Afraid. Like whatever she'd become was no longer the woman I once knew, but something far more unpredictable. Something cracked and desperate beneath her polished surface. Tessa was never one to sit still, not even emotionally. She always had to be a step ahead, a layer removed, untouchable. And now here she was, parked like a statue outside my apartment building, trying to become part of my life again without ever asking to be let back in. A week had passed since I saw her SUV in the dark. I convinced myself maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was just a look-alike car, same make and model, and I was letting old wounds make me paranoid. I told Dana it was nothing. But on Thursday night, it happened again, this time in broad daylight. I was sitting with Dana at a quiet corner cafe near Grant Street. Just two people trying to enjoy overpriced scones and lukewarm cappuccinos, when I saw a reflection in the cafe window. A figure across the street, standing perfectly still, arms crossed, face partially hidden by oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap. I knew that stance. I knew that posture. I froze mid-sentence and Dana noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice light but concerned. I lied and said I thought I saw someone from work. I didn't want to drag her into this spiral, not yet. Not before I knew for sure what Tessa was trying to do. But when I casually glanced back 30 seconds later, the woman was gone. Vanished like a ghost that knew when to disappear. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a blurry picture of me and Dana from behind, sitting at the cafe. My stomach twisted into a knot. I stared at the image for several minutes, hoping it was a sick prank or some wrong number, but deep down I already knew. Only one person would send something like that. Tessa never had to say anything to make her point. She used silence like a blade. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling while Dana slept in the bedroom, completely unaware of how much darker things were getting. And I hated myself for not warning her, for dragging her into this with no shield. I used to be the kind of guy who over-explained everything, who apologized too much for things that weren't my fault. But with Tessa, I learned to say less, because every truth I ever gave her got thrown back in my face like it was some sort of weakness. The next morning, I found something tucked under my windshield wiper. It was a napkin. Not a note. Not a threat. Just a single napkin from the same cafe, folded neatly, with a lipstick print on the edge. Tessa's shade. I would have recognized that muted crimson anywhere. She wore it the day we signed our divorce papers. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, wondering how this had gone from heartbreak to obsession so fast. What did she want? Did she regret letting me go? Or was this some twisted way of making sure I never forgot her? Was this love, grief, or control disguised as grief? And here's the part one haven't admitted to anyone, not even to Dana. Part of me felt something when I saw that lipstick mark. Not love, not attraction, just dread and guilt, and some strange lingering guilt that maybe I had moved on too fast. That maybe, deep down, I was the villain in her story. But no. I reminded myself what she said to me. I remembered her walking past me like I didn't matter. I remembered the hollow, "Go find someone else," that came from her lips like she was tossing me in the garbage and walking away whistling. I didn't ask for this game. I followed her rules. I left. I let go. But Tessa? She's still here. Still watching. The day it stopped being psychological and turned physical was the day I realized I might not be in control of my own life anymore. I used to think Tessa's passive-aggressive games were just her version of dealing with emotions, detached, indirect, full of sharp silences and coded glances. But after that napkin under my windshield wiper, the tone changed. Whatever line existed between sorrow and surveillance, she had crossed it, and I think she liked how it felt. It started with my mailbox. At first, it was subtle. A few envelopes slightly ripped open. A subscription I never signed up for, some ridiculous yoga magazine I'd never read, addressed to Kurt Isabloom, like it was some inside joke only she understood. Then came the missing packages. Amazon deliveries marked as delivered that never showed up. I thought maybe porch pirates were just hitting the building, until I found one of the missing boxes 3 blocks away, water-damaged and empty, tossed near a dumpster behind a nail salon. Inside had been a gift I ordered for Dana's birthday, a handmade necklace with her birthstone. Someone had pried the box open and taken only that. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. I told myself 1,000 lies to avoid the ugliest truth, that my ex-wife had begun dismantling my new life piece by piece while smiling to herself in the dark. I started to feel like a lab rat in a maze she was redesigning every day, tightening the walls, altering the exits, waiting to see when I'd break. The final straw, the moment I stopped pretending this was anything but intentional, came when Dana got a call from an unknown number. I was with her at the time, lying on the couch, her legs over mine, when she answered. The voice on the other end was masked, distorted, like someone had run it through an app. But it was female. And calm. Too calm. It said, "You're not safe with him. You don't know what he's capable of." Dana froze. I could feel her pulse race through her ankle against my hand. She put the call on speaker and said, "Who is this?" But the line went dead. She stared at me like she didn't know who she was looking at anymore. I could see the fear in her eyes, not just at the voice, but at the possibility that it might be telling the truth. And I didn't blame her. Because the more I tried to explain that I had no idea who would do this, the more I insisted that this had to be Tessa, the less believable I sounded. I looked like a man unraveling. A man dragging his new partner into old fires he claimed he didn't set. Later that night, I scrolled through my old photos with Tessa, trying to find a reason why this was happening. I was looking for the moment she turned, if there even was a moment. Maybe it had always been there. In the way she smiled without softness. In the way she used affection like a bargaining chip. I remembered how she once told me, during a fight, if I ever really wanted to ruin you, Curtis, I wouldn't even have to try. I thought it was just anger. Just a dramatic line meant to hurt me in the moment. Now I was starting to think it was a confession. I tried calling her. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Finally, I texted. "Please stop. Whatever this is, you told me to go." I went. Let it go. She didn't respond. But she didn't have to. Because 2 hours later, when I took out the trash, there was a paper bag sitting at the foot of my door. Inside? My old wedding band. The one I lost a year ago and swore had just slipped down the sink. I swear to God. I stood there staring at it for over 20 minutes, holding that cheap gold circle in my hand like it was radioactive. I didn't bring it inside. I didn't tell Dana. I just tossed it into the trash, shut the door, and locked it twice. But no matter how many locks I use now, it doesn't matter. Because she's already found her way back in. I couldn't keep living like that. Waking up every day wondering if today was the day she'd push it further. Wondering if she'd finally cross a line she couldn't uncross. I couldn't keep pretending this was just a bitter ex acting out, like she was still licking her wounds in silence. No. That silence had turned into something strategic, something meant to unnerve me one fragment at a time. I realized that if I didn't confront her head-on, this wouldn't stop. Not next week. Not next year. Not ever. So I drove to her apartment. It wasn't even a rational decision. It was instinct. I didn't text, didn't call. I just got in my car and started driving like I was possessed by some desperate urge to reclaim my own sanity. I hadn't been to her place since the divorce. She'd moved right after we split. All I had was the address on the envelope she once used to mail my tax form. I never imagined I'd use it. I sat in the car outside her building for almost an hour, rehearsing what I'd say. You need to stop. You told me to leave, and I did. This is your mess, not mine. You don't get to haunt me just because you hate your own decisions. But none of that felt strong enough. None of it felt like it would reach whatever version of her existed now. I finally got out and walked up to the door. Her name wasn't on the buzzer. Just a sticker that said, "Parcel deliveries, leave in lobby." No unit number. I waited. Eventually someone else walked out and held the door open, assuming I lived there. I stepped in. The lobby was dim, quiet, smelled like burnt toast and lemon cleaner. I waited by the mailboxes, unsure of what I was even looking for. Maybe her name, maybe her scent, maybe a reason to turn around. And then I heard it, laughter. Not just any laugh. Her laugh. But it was different. Higher pitched, exaggerated, like a bad impression of herself. It came from upstairs, echoing down the stairwell. My legs moved before my brain could stop them. I followed the sound up one flight. Two. Then I saw her, or at least the back of her. She was standing in the hallway, barefoot, wearing a massive hoodie that clearly didn't belong to her, holding a wine bottle in one hand and a phone in the other, talking to someone on FaceTime. I froze. I could have turned back. I should have. But I just stood there, 5 feet away, watching her laugh at something on the screen, completely unaware that I was there. And in that moment, I realized something brutal. She didn't look broken. She didn't look regretful. She looked happy. Free. Like whatever was left of me in her life had been swept out like dust under a rug. And for a second, I felt so stupid, like maybe this whole thing was just in my head. Maybe she hadn't been stalking me. Maybe I was the one holding on to something that was already gone. Then her phone slipped in her hand, and she turned slightly to adjust it and saw me. The smile vanished instantly. She didn't speak. Neither did I. She just stared at me like I was a stranger. No recognition in her eyes. Just flat, emotionless stillness. Then, without a word, she stepped back into her apartment and shut the door. That's it. No questions, no outrage, no greeting. Just the door. I stood in that hallway like a fool, listening, waiting, hoping she'd open it again and explain what the hell was happening. But all I heard was the deadbolt clicking into place. I left. I got in my car and drove until I ended up in some gas station parking lot an hour away, sitting there like a grown man with nowhere to go. And then, right there in that parking lot, my phone buzzed. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. The message was only 4 words long. I see you now. That's when it hit me. That wasn't her in the hallway. Or not the her I knew. That was someone else wearing her face, wearing her memories, but using them against me like weapons in a game I never signed up for. I thought confronting her would bring me clarity, closure, something. But all it brought was a deeper sense of fear and a creeping realization that she hadn't lost her mind. She was perfectly in control. And whatever this was, it wasn't about love anymore. It was about watching me fall apart, piece by piece. I started locking everything. Doors, windows, drawers. I even put tape on the webcam of my laptop. I didn't tell Dana, not all of it. I just said I was feeling unsafe lately, like maybe someone from my past had some leftover anger and I needed to be cautious. She was supportive, but I could tell she didn't fully understand. How could she? She hadn't seen the cold vacancy in Tessa's eyes. She hadn't stood in that hallway feeling like she was being watched from behind her own memories. I started noticing things at home. Small, quiet things that didn't scream danger, but whispered unsettling. The blinds in the kitchen were angled differently when I came home from work. The TV remote was placed in a way I never leave it. Once, I found the fridge open, not wide, just barely cracked, as if someone had opened it and changed their mind. I told myself I was just being paranoid, maybe leaving things in weird places without realizing it. I gaslit myself into calmness. That's how deep she was getting under my skin. Then Dana got sick. It started with nausea, then insomnia. Then she said her heart would race for no reason, like she'd been running without moving. Doctors couldn't find anything. No virus, no diagnosis. Just stress. I knew better. I knew what it felt like to be under invisible attack. Tessa wasn't just targeting me anymore. She was trying to dismantle the one thing I'd built after her. The one piece of my life that didn't have her fingerprints all over it. I tried to find evidence. Cameras? I ordered one and hid it in the living room. I even bought one of those cheap spycam detectors off Amazon, the kind that flashes when it senses hidden lenses. I searched the apartment top to bottom. Nothing. Until I checked the bedroom closet. There was an old shoebox on the top shelf, not mine, not Dana's. I pulled it down, and inside was a stack of printed photographs. All of them were of me. Walking. Eating. Sitting in my car. In the grocery store. Holding hands with Dana. Some taken through windows. Some from across the street. All dated. All labeled with little notes in Tessa's handwriting. He looked tired today. She touched his face. I wonder if he does that back. He bought her flowers. I used to get daisies. I dropped the box. I actually dropped it. I stood there shaking, staring at my own life dissected in ink and obsession. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was surveillance. A kind of ownership, like she believed she still had access to my every movement. I felt like I was living in a cage that looked like freedom. I didn't tell Dana. I couldn't. I couldn't explain how someone I used to sleep beside had turned into the shadow creature that slithered through my routines. I burned the box in a public trash barrel 2 blocks away, watching every photo curl and blacken like I was trying to burn the past itself. That night, Dana found me curled up on the bathroom floor. Not drunk. Not crying. Just overwhelmed. I told her everything. The notes. The pictures. The stalking. I expected her to freak out, to run, to call the cops or scream or slam a door. But she didn't. She just looked at me, pale and silent, and said, "Curtis, there's something you need to see." She went to her purse and pulled out an envelope. It had no return address. She hadn't shown me before, she said, because she thought it was some scam or prank. Inside was a single photo, one I hadn't seen in the box of me, asleep in our bed. The timestamp? 3 nights ago. The angle? From inside our room. There was only one note scribbled on the back. "You didn't close the window." I couldn't breathe. I actually couldn't breathe. The air felt thick and slow, like trying to inhale underwater. I ran to the bedroom window, checked the latch locked. But that didn't mean anything. It could have been open before. She could have gotten in. She had gotten in. We were no longer safe. Not even in our own bed. And the worst part? She was right. I hadn't closed the window. After the photo of me sleeping showed up, I knew the line between fear and danger had fully disappeared. I wasn't just being watched. I was being studied, monitored, predicted. That's when I finally understood. Tessa wasn't trying to ruin my life. She was trying to rewrite it. Dana and I left the apartment that night. I told her to pack a bag, only the essentials. I didn't care where we went. We just needed out. We got a cheap motel off the interstate, the kind with buzzing lights and carpet that smelled like cigarette glue. I double-locked the door and shoved a chair under the handle like I was in a war zone. That night, we didn't talk much. Dana sat on the bed with her knees pulled up, and I paced like a man who'd forgotten how to sit down. The next morning, I got an email. No subject, no text, just a single attachment, a sound recording. I stared at it for over an hour before I opened it. It was 22 minutes of soft breathing, the occasional floor creak, and finally, a whisper. Not a whisper to the mic. A whisper in the room. She'd recorded herself in our apartment, standing there in the dark, just watching us. The whisper came near the end. I had to play it 3 times to understand the words. She said, "You blink so slowly when you sleep. Like you're trying to dream something that doesn't include me." I dropped the phone. Dana begged me to go to the police, but what could I tell them? That my ex-wife was whispering poetry over my bed while leaving no trace? That she was breaking in and leaving no signs of forced entry? That she was inside my life in a way that made it impossible to prove anything to anyone but myself? That's when I remembered the storage unit. During the divorce, Tessa had insisted we keep everything clean. No messy legal disputes, no drama. We agreed to split the stuff evenly, and she offered to store what she didn't immediately need in a rental unit across town until I'm more settled, she'd said. I hadn't thought about it in months, but now it started to make sense. That's where she'd be keeping her trophies, her evidence, her blueprints for whatever twisted version of our story she was constructing. I still had the spare key. I kept it taped inside a drawer out of habit. I had once considered going there to collect my old journals, but I never had the nerve. That afternoon, while Dana was sleeping off the stress, I drove across town and stood in front of the rusted orange door of Unit 313. Opening it felt like opening a time capsule built by someone else about me. The first thing I noticed was the smell, cold paper and plastic and something chemical, like glue or marker ink. The unit was meticulously organized. Shelves, binders, boxes, all labeled. Not with her name, but mine. Curtis, year 1. Curtis, employment. Curtis, relationship shift. Each box contained pages and pages of notes, typed and annotated in her handwriting. Surveillance photos, receipts, calendar logs of my schedule. A separate folder labeled Dana with a printed map of her route to work and the hours she tended to stop for coffee. I found a small box labeled simply window. Inside it, a copy of the key to my old apartment, one I didn't even know was missing. There was also a black and white photo printed on film, not digital, of me standing shirtless in the window, brushing my teeth. The timestamp? 6 weeks before I even met Dana. That's when the pit in my stomach sank into something worse, a realization that she hadn't just been reacting to me moving on. She had been waiting for it, preparing. And now that it had happened, she had begun the next phase. There was one more thing inside that box, a folded-up note with the words for the final chapter scrawled in marker on the front. I unfolded it carefully. Inside, in handwriting too neat to be impulsive, were the words, "You always leave the window open, Curtis. I only ever walked through it." That was it. No threat. No apology. Just a statement, like a final entry in a novel written in secret. I didn't take anything from the unit. I didn't touch another box. I just backed out slowly, closed the door, and stood in the hallway outside with my knees trembling, trying to understand what kind of storm I had walked straight into. She had been planning this longer than I knew her. Not to win me back, not even to hurt me, but to remind me, no matter where I go, or who I love next, that she got there first. I drove back from the storage unit in complete silence. No radio, no calls, just the sound of tires humming against the road and my own breath trying not to sound like panic. It wasn't just obsession anymore. It wasn't even revenge. Tessa had built a world out of me, one she controlled, recorded, revised like a mad author unwilling to let her characters out of the story. When I returned to the motel, Dana was already packing. Her hands were trembling. She didn't even ask me what I'd found. She just looked at my face and knew, whatever I'd seen, it was worse than anything we'd imagined. I told her to throw out her phone. We'd buy new ones. I told her not to use credit cards, not to log into anything familiar. "We're not running," I said out loud, but deep down I knew that's exactly what we were doing. We drove until we hit another state. Slept in a roadside inn with flickering fluorescent lights and a ceiling fan that spun like it might unscrew and drop on our heads. I barely slept. I kept checking the window every hour, convinced I'd see her silhouette, standing just close enough to be recognized, but far enough that I could never prove it. But that night, no one came. The next morning, I checked my email on a burner laptop. Nothing from her. No cryptic messages. No strange photos. Just silence. And I should have felt relief, but I didn't. I felt watched. Not by her, necessarily, but by the space she'd carved inside me. Like her absence wasn't peace. It was preparation. Dana was the one who suggested we fight back. She said we couldn't keep reacting. We had to do something. Expose her. Report her. End it. So we made a plan. We returned home the next evening. We were careful. We changed passwords. Installed cameras. Dana reached out to a family friend in law enforcement, someone off the record who could look into things without spooking the system. I made copies of the photos from the storage unit, just in case. We gave him everything. The recordings, the mailbox tampering, the break-in photo. He said it was serious, that it might finally be enough. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt sick. Because the moment we started taking steps to break the story open, things got quiet again. Too quiet. No texts. No sightings. The silence started to feel like someone holding their breath right before they pounce. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. I got an email from my boss. One line. "We need to talk about the complaint." At first, I thought it was a mistake. But when I arrived at the office, he closed the door and slid a file across the desk. Inside were screenshots. Dozens of them. Emails, allegedly written by me, full of disturbing language. Threats. Inappropriate comments about Dana. Accusations that she was manipulating me, poisoning me against my ex, as one message said. all of them sent from a burner email in my name, with writing that mimicked mine almost perfectly. She had framed me. Tessa had created an entire digital trail of fabricated abuse and planted it like a ticking bomb. I was under internal review. Not fired, yet, but put on suspension while they investigated. I could barely form words. I walked out of the building feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's skin, someone dangerous and unhinged. Exactly who Tessa had rewritten me to be. When I got back to the apartment, Dana was gone. Not a note. Not a message. Just gone. Her phone off. Her things still there. Her purse untouched. I called everyone I could think of. No one had seen her. Hours passed. Then the knock came. A plain manila envelope on the floor outside my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words typed in the center. She's safe with me. No signature. No instructions. No contact info. Just those words, printed in perfect black ink like it was a line from a screenplay. I dropped to my knees. That night, I called every hospital, every friend, every police station. I didn't tell them everything. How could I? Who would believe that your ex-wife was staging psychological warfare like it was performance art? But I knew. I knew Tessa hadn't just taken Dana. She'd taken control of the entire script. And the worst part? Somewhere deep inside me, the part one hate the most, there was a voice that said, "You did this. You left the window open. You let her write this." I don't know how long I sat there on the floor staring at those 4 words. She's safe with me, but at some point, the fear turned into something else. Not anger. Not even panic. Just clarity. A numb, trembling realization that I'd reached the edge of whatever story Tessa thought she was writing. And that I had 2 choices, stay inside her version of me, or burn the whole thing down and finally become something else. The first thing I did was drive to the police. No more half measures, no more private detectives or quiet favors. I filed a full report. I gave them everything. The fake emails. The storage unit. The photos. I told them about the envelope, the voicemail, the break-ins, the surveillance. I expected laughter, or maybe disbelief. But what I got instead was a long, quiet stare from the officer behind the desk. And then he said, "You're not the first one." That was the first breath I'd taken in hours that didn't feel like glass. Turns out, Tessa had left fingerprints before, not literally, but trails. There had been restraining orders in another state years before we met. A sealed file related to a former coworker. Nothing that led to jail time, but enough red flags that, when paired with the evidence I brought, finally broke the silence wide open. They found Dana the next morning. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't tied up or drugged or buried in some shack in the woods. She was in a cabin, one of the same ones Tessa used to disappear to on her retreats. Dana had been lured there by a message that appeared to come from me, a fake request for her to come talk, just us. Tessa had posed as me. Again. But Dana knew the moment she arrived that something was wrong. She told me later, "It didn't sound like your voice. Not even in the message. It sounded like someone trying to remember how you used to talk." She tried to leave. Tessa took her phone and keys but didn't touch her. She just talked. About us. About me. About how I used to look at her. How she could still see the version of me that I'd thrown away. It was disturbing, yes, but also pitiful. And Dana told me that's what stuck with her most, not the danger. The loneliness. The desperation. The police brought Dana back. She ran to me, crying, saying she was sorry she doubted me. Sorry for ever thinking I'd slip into madness like Tessa claimed. And I just held her. That was all I wanted, to hold her, and never let the story become hers too. Tessa was taken into custody the next day. She didn't resist. She smiled. Smiled like someone who already expected the ending, or maybe just liked watching it all collapse. They found everything. Journals, timelines, even mock-ups of fake police reports she'd been drafting. She never touched me physically. That was the key to why it went on so long. She never broke the law loudly. She chipped away at reality until no one was sure what was true. But now? It was over. I moved. Dana and I both did. New place. New city. We got new jobs, new phones, even new email addresses. It felt like shedding skin. I thought I'd never be able to relax again, but little by little, we found peace. Dana started sleeping through the night. I stopped checking the blinds every hour. I even started writing again, journaling at first. Just small entries. Little reminders that I had survived something no one should have to go through. And one morning, I woke up and realized she wasn't in my head anymore. Tessa lost. Not in court, not even in the headlines. She lost because I stopped living in her story. and started riding mine.